back to the Tennessee Valley Football Podcast. This is Clint Guffey.
Nathan McLaughlin, joining live.
First things first, I want to dedicate this episode to my little brother. The little bastard had a really nasty car wreck this week. Flipped his truck 7 times, went a total of 700 feet, 100 feet in the air. Walked away with a concussion and bruised lungs. So,
very lucky. He's very lucky, and God, just absolutely relieved that he is fine. Goodness gracious. Those wrecks like that is something you don't want anybody to have to go through, especially somebody that's like a little brother to you. Like your little brother and somebody that's like a little brother to me. So
it's been a very eventful week for my family. Like my niece had to have her appendix removed. My other niece broke her arm. And then my little brother flipped his truck 8 times. So, and I didn't know that initially. I didn't find that out till I was at the hospital.
Family's running through the ringer.
All right. The dichotomy of the tall versus short quarterback.
Tall versus short quarterback, and this is, I put the picture on our Facebook post, and obviously likened to Kyler Murray in the NFL Combine. So everybody should know where we're going with this. I think the game is kind of switching in a way to where, shorter quarterbacks are more accepted nowadays. Drew Brees isn't. He's listed at 6 foot, but he's not 6 foot. He's 5'11" at very best. So he's a shorter quarterback. Russell Wilson's obviously is what everybody points to, and he's obviously fantastic.
Yeah, Super Bowl.
I think the prototypical 6'4", 225 is just not as necessary nowadays.
No, because you see a change in the height of the receivers. Like today at the Combine, like they were talking about how the receivers are a lot bigger these days, and the receivers, like in the drills, were monsters.
There's receivers. I mean, receivers are going like 6'4", 230. Some of these guys 6'4", 240, and still running with decent speed. So, the size on the outside, has just made it so different. I mean, it's just easier to kind of hit those guys. I would suspect in stride, or easier for them to win 50-50 balls. And at this point, it feels like it's kind of shifting again.
Even the tight ends are not the big slow.
Yeah, they're not just blocking plotters anymore.
No.
I mean, they're pass catchers out there.
I mean, Irv Smith ran a 4.6.
Yep, and then Noah Fant from Iowa ran a 4.5 in the 40. I mean, 4.5 flat. That's the thing. Like, I would say that honestly, it seems like the public's opinion has shifted, and they're starting to realize that smarts are needed at quarterback, quick decisions are needed at quarterback, and you got to have a decent arm to be able to get hit those out routes and hit those posts on time and hit everything. But it's the rhythm, the timing, and the accuracy to fit it in tight windows that people are looking for nowadays. And I can't sit there and act like Kyler Murray doesn't have at least a little bit of all of that. I mean, he's got a very, over a decent arm. I mean,
absolutely.
He's got.
That throw that he had in the Orange Bowl where he rolled out and ran on the run and threw that touchdown.
Absolutely.
That bomb, it's hard to argue the arm talent he has.
Yeah, and there's a difference between being able to just throw long and then having height on your ball while it goes long. That's what Aaron Rodgers is known for. He throws these Hail Marys that feel like they go up to the rafters in a dome and then come back down. It's the height that you get on those balls. It's kind of like punting. There's a difference between punting at 40 yards, but you punted it, in almost a straight arc, and then punting at 40 yards with a hang time of 4.5. There's a big difference in that, and so. That's why a lot of people were talking about, I remember it in it was either the Combine last year or 2 years ago. They were talking about how, I think it was last year because Josh Allen, came out there and he threw the ball, and I mean, it was just way up in the sky, and he could just chunk it wherever he wanted to, and his ball looked pretty. And then I think that they were talking about Lamar Jackson. They were like, Lamar Jackson's definitely got arm strength, but you see how flat his delivery came out. Didn't matter too much this year because he still won a lot of games. But, there's a difference between that flat delivery and then that high arcing delivery that quarterbacks have. And Kyler Murray playing baseball, it absolutely doesn't hurt him with, football skills because, to throw a ball, it don't matter how small the ball is. Like, to throw a ball in baseball, you've got to have some kind of arm. Like those guys out there that can just, flick the wrist and throw it. Throwing a football is about being able to flick the wrist the right way.
And especially if you play outfield, I mean, you've got to get the ball.
You have to get the ball back in field, and especially on those MLB fields, it ain't like going out here on the high school diamond. I mean, it's a long way from that outfield to the infield. I don't like Oklahoma at all, and I did think that Kyler Murray kind of chickened out on the SEC and kind of ran to the Big 12. That's just my opinion.
He wouldn't be in the draft or won the Heisman, in my opinion, if he hadn't left Texas A&M.
Exactly.
And obviously, he smelled something weird with Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't like Oklahoma at all. And I was fully convinced that Kyler Murray was not going to go in there and hit that 5'10" mark. I thought, I was like, I'm hearing some stuff. He could be 5'8", I was like, I feel like he's going to go in there to the combine and be about 5'9" and a half. And is there a big difference in half an inch? I don't think it's as big of a deal as, people are making it out to be. And we'll get to talk about this inches game, because football is a game of inches, but it's not a game of inches based off your body measurements. It's a game of inches based on how you move the football.
He weighed in 2 pounds heavier than Russell Wilson did at the draft.
Yep. And then another thing was hand size. His hand size was like around 10 inches, which is, everybody made a stink about the hand size whenever Jared Goff and Carson Wentz and all those were in the draft, and everybody was like, everybody's talking about this hand size and stuff, but hand size has, it seems like it's been correlated to success. There's not been a lot of guys with hands that are under 9 inches.
No, because when you're throwing the ball like this, and I'm demonstrating the ball, just cupping, you're cupping your hand around it. You can't get your thumb underneath it.
Exactly.
That makes a difference. You can't throw a ball like that.
And that's what they've mentioned. They've said, Jared Goff has small hands. He's still been a successful quarterback, but he's been susceptible to strip sacks. And then there's also a big thing. John Gruden was talking about it in the quarterback camp with Carson Wentz that he had a few years ago. He was like, I want you to be like another Carson, man. I want you to be like Carson Palmer. You know why? Because he's got 2 hands on the ball, man. He's a 2-handed monster. So it's like he's talking about, keeping 2 hands on the ball while you're pushing up into the pocket and not swinging that ball wide, with one hand.
I think that's a big problem with young quarterbacks.
It's a huge problem, and you've got these guys.
Especially running quarterbacks.
And, it's like you'll see them every once in a blue moon. You'll see these guys that I don't know if it's just pure cockiness or whatever, but they will not tuck the ball like as an open field runner. They'll hold the ball in their hand and just kind of shuck and jive. They'll be a wide receiver or a punt returner, kick returner, running back, and they'll hold the ball in their hand, like a quarterback would dropping back, and they'll run the ball around with it. I don't know if it's just cockiness or what it is.
I think it might be somebody that's not as disciplined in that side of the ball. Like if you have a DB running the ball back, he might fling the ball around more, or you might have a receiver that doesn't get the ball as much, but he returns kicks.
Yep, definitely.
And he's not as disciplined as somebody who's played 25, 30 games and is in his junior year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my opinion.
Definitely, yeah. So ball security is a big deal, and it's a little different with the hand size thing because especially when you're in cold weather, you're up there in Buffalo, New York, and it's snowing,
or even like Seattle, it gets cold up there, or in Denver. I mean,
and I know it personally just from playing football and being around football. When you hold a ball, I mean, when you hold like a high school regulation or college regulation or NFL regulation ball, you got to get your hand around that thing like that. I mean, it's a girthy ball, so it's hard. It's hard. Like even for people who think they have big hands, it's hard to get your entire hand around it. So, to have a small hand and go out there small little, I can't eat Burger King burgers hands and trying to, I have these tiny hands and going out there and trying to hold a ball, it does make a huge difference. It absolutely makes a huge difference. Now, if you got 10-inch hands, does that mean that you're going to be a successful NFL quarterback? Absolutely not.
You can be 6'5" and not be a successful quarterback.
Yep, you can be 6'5", 240 like Blake Bortles, and you can be the sorriest quarterback in the league, which is exactly what I think Blake Bortles is.
And watching this draft today made me realize how disrespected Jake Coker was in not getting an invite to the draft invite to the combine, and watching like that quarterback from Buffalo, watching that quarterback from Duke, and then watching Nick Fitzgerald throw the ball. None of those guys were missing balls. They're missing throws, and they're throws that they shouldn't make. And in my opinion, the way I feel like Jake got just disrespected by not getting an invite.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would he ever have really panned out and been super successful? There ain't no telling. I mean, he probably not. But I mean, some of these guys like Jake Coker and others, they don't even get chances. Like, they get hurt and they don't get, even looked at. But you'll look at a guy you'll try your hardest to make something out of Christian Hackenberg, who is apparently the worst quarterback prospect since, honestly, and I mean, obviously we were little kids when this happened, but honestly, it feels like Hackenberg was like the worst quarterback, like, bust. I mean, he went in the second round. He seems like the worst quarterback anything that got drafted since a guy that went right before Tom Brady, or he didn't go right before Tom Brady, but he was the quarterback right ahead of Tom Brady that went. A guy named Spurgeon Wynn that the Browns drafted. Obviously, the Browns did it. This was a guy. It's called Texas State now, but it used to be called Southwest Texas State. Played quarterback at Southwest Texas State. He had a strong arm, but he completed less than 50% of his passes and never had a winning record as a quarterback. And I think, I may be wrong, he might have had more interceptions than he did touchdowns, and this was in 2000, or in 1999 being his last year. And it was like on the Brady 6 documentary that they were talking about, the 6 quarterbacks going ahead. Tom Brady's dad was like, I mean, we could not believe it, less than 50%. He was like, Tommy threw it better than 62% his entire career and won games on the biggest stage, and instead they draft this guy that couldn't even complete 50% of his balls. That's what Christian Hackenberg. But, the bad thing is Spurgeon Wynn actually got to play in games. And actually, I mean, it was absolutely terrible, but got to play in games. Like, Hackenberg, they didn't even want him on the field. They were like, we would rather just, that. It seemed like if every quarterback went down and they had Christian Hackenberg, or they had to come up with, they had to run the wing T, and
they bring in Nathan Peterman.
Put somebody in it, they had to run the wing T and put, Ardarius Stewart in at quarterback. I think they would have done that before they would have put Hackenberg in, honestly.
Well, I think.
And then Hackenberg, goes to, I think it was maybe the Memphis AAF team, and he's garbage. I mean, absolutely garbage. He can't even complete passes against lower competition. He cannot do it.
Well, I think Trace McSorley's going to follow suit too. He was missing balls today, and
well, I popped it up just for a split second. And they were wide receivers and quarterbacks. The quarterbacks were just throwing the balls to the wide receivers, and it's supposed to be a wide receiver drill. And the wide receivers couldn't get good work because it was a sideline drill. You're throwing an out route on a sideline drill. I remember seeing Will Greer. He threw one to this guy, and he let him way out of bounds. I mean, the guy was in the white paint before the ball even got to him.
I saw that throw, but I also saw Trace McSorley, it was an out, I don't know, maybe a 6-yard out, 10-yard, 5. I don't know. It was a short. It's you come up and you pivot on the numbers and break outside of the toe tap drill.
Mm.
He missed every one of those throws.
I mean, it's terrible.
And then he was missing, on that guy from Buffalo. I can't remember his name.
Tyree Jackson.
Yeah, he missed. He didn't miss them, but the receivers almost were having to stop on the slant routes, and then the same way with Trace McSorley.
Tyree Jackson is going to wow people because he's 6'7", 245, and runs a 4.59 in the 40 time.
Steve Smith Jr. is down there getting on him on, I think it was the drill where they were throwing the flies.
Mm.
And I don't remember what he did, but Steve, like, it was going to a commercial break and they were talking, and Steve was down there, like, getting on him, and, like, they were laughing about it. But I don't remember what he was getting on him for, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's the Brock Osweiler effect.
yeah, that's the thing. They're going to sit there and they're going to be wowed by him being 6'7", 245 and being fairly quick,
He's not Cam
big
Newton.
athlete. But I think he's going to be an absolute, if he's drafted at all, I mean, he's just not going to make it. McSorley is, pretty quick, but and it's not anything against him being short or anything like that. I plain out don't think he's.
No,
I think he's a good college quarterback. Don't think he's going to cut it out.
And that's fine. I mean,
because it's not everybody is Baker Mayfield, because he has an unerring accuracy to him that many people just do not
absolutely.
have. When it comes to Trace McSorley, you might have heard a few weeks there that he was in like the Heisman conversation, but was he ever a serious contender? Not really.
No, he was running the ball a lot too.
Yeah, and they were utilizing a skill set because apparently he was the fastest quarterback. If Kyler Murray would have run, he would have been the fastest one. But the official fastest time out of all the guys that did run was Trace McSorley. So he's a very quick guy, but I don't think he's got the passing ability to be a guy. He's not going to be up there with a Haskins, who I think
Haskins had a pretty good pro day. I
think Haskins can
or combine.
I think Haskins, his floor is, semi-decent quarterback. I mean, his absolute floor is back up. I mean, I think that, Dwayne Haskins will stick around in the league. Will he be a franchise guy? I'm not going to speculate and say that he would be. I don't know if I trust him that much.
He was throwing the ball better than most of the dudes.
He does throw the ball, fine. And, I mean, his absolute floor is he will stick around in the league.
Another one that surprised me was Jake Browning throwing the ball. He threw the ball really well.
Yeah, that's really shocking because I'm not too high on him. He's got, he got these tiny hands that he can't eat Whoppers with. I mean, he was well under 9 inches, and, he really tailed off. They were talking about him as a redshirt freshman when Washington played Alabama, how great he was. And these past 2 years, I mean, did he even exist? Like,
I forgot
against Auburn, he didn't exist.
Well, I had saw something. It was like towards the end of the season, maybe their bowl game or whatever, and I was like, I forgot he was still playing college football.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like Washington kind of just relied more on playing good defense and running Myles Gaskin. Because Jake Browning, it just seems like he completely lost it. So
the balls he was throwing today, like, he was on the money. I mean,
yeah,
that doesn't translate anything, and I understand that. But compared to the quarterbacks that have had the praise coming into the draft and the combine, and these past few months, and he wasn't talked about like some of these guys. And I would take Jake Browning any day over Trace McSorley.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a gun to my head and, you're telling me you got Jake Browning on the board and then you got Trace McSorley and Tyree Jackson to choose between, I'll choose Jake Browning over any of them. Because, I would just much rather, not tie myself to somebody that's just seen as athletic but can't really make any throws. Tyree Jackson just came out way too early. I mean, he had, at least another year of eligibility, but he just came out early because he thinks that people are just going to be enamored with his athleticism, and he'll get drafted. I mean, somebody will be dumb enough to draft him, but I don't. And the thing is that they've talked about in the NFL, that has been talked about like online and stuff like that, is there such thing as too tall in the NFL for quarterback? And I think there absolutely is. These guys that are 6'8", 6'7", they never pan out. Tyree Jackson will not pan out just because he's 6'7". Brock Osweiler, everybody talks about how bad he was. He was not miserable, in 2015 when he filled in for Peyton Manning. He was just miserable after that. But overall, he's not good. And then it also reminds me Mark McGuire's brother. Mark McGuire, the Mr. Home Run, hitting all these home runs and stuff. You got a picture of him up there. Mark McGuire's brother, Dan McGuire, was a first-round draft pick at one point in time at quarterback. He was 6'8", and he absolutely did not pan out at all. these super tall quarterbacks, Mike Glennon, another one that just absolutely is terrible.
Was it Steven Rivers from Athens?
Oh, yeah, Phillip Rivers' brother.
Yeah, he was horrible.
He was terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. He transferred to Vanderbilt, and I was like, oh, they got a starting quarterback now. And he was absolutely putrid. I mean, these super tall quarterbacks, I mean, sometimes they'll work out in college level, but, and then the high school level, you can probably just use them to bowl over everybody. But it gets to the NFL level, there's such thing as too tall, I feel, and they're too tall. I think, honestly, 6'6" is where you start getting too tall out of quarterbacks.
I feel like 6'3", 6'4" is a sweet spot.
Yep. And, I would even throw, because I would throw 6'5" as the max up there just because of how many good 6'5" guys there are, like Ben Roethlisberger. Peyton Manning was 6'5".
His forehead helps him out.
Yeah, his forehead helps him out, that five-headed he's got.
He's probably like 6'3" whenever he went in the league, and by the time he retired,
that forehead just grew so much. Yeah, so I mean, I think there is totally such thing as too tall at quarterback, and people are just getting so enamored with these. It's an American thing. Like, people are so enamored with these big bodies and stuff. Like, they were talking about like Jonah Williams, and everybody's talking about only in America can a guy that's 6'4", 300 pounds be considered small. Like, it's ridiculous.
Maybe in Iceland.
Yeah, maybe. Just because they got so many bodybuilders in a land of like 400,000 people. But, I mean, it's just crazy. Which leads me to another segue. We might as well keep on if we're talking about the combine. These offensive linemen and these arm lengths is what I wanted to talk about, because everybody has come out and they're talking about, Jonah Williams has 33 and 5/8 inch arms, like, too short arms. Everybody's saying he's too short.
I think mine's 32.
His arms are too short. He can't play. And then he comes out with an awesome rebuttal, and he said, well, I'll list off some guys that had shorter arms than I do. Joe Thomas, who's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Just hasn't been elected yet. Jason Peters, who's possibly a Hall of Famer, hasn't been, he hasn't retired yet officially.
Sure.
And those were the two biggest names. I can't remember the other guys off the top of my head, but Joe Thomas is all you need to say. I mean, Joe Thomas, I think he had like 32-inch arms or something like that. And he was the premier left tackle from the time he set foot on field in Cleveland to the time he retired. He was the premier left tackle in the NFL. There's no better than Joe Thomas.
It's the tall versus short quarterback thing.
Absolutely.
It's that same thing.
It's just being.
And it's the tall running back versus the short running back. Look, Derrick Henry's done he's done better than people thought he would do. I thought he would do pretty well.
And then, it's like, this pretty much will just evolve into an entire combine topic. The thing is like the 40 times. I can't attribute the quote to him because I don't remember who it is, but there's a guy that said it. He was like, the only place where 40 times important on the field is corner. And the reason why that is because if you get beat by a wide receiver going past you, you're just beat. And you're not going to be able to recover if you don't have speed. He was like, everywhere else, why does speed matter? Like, he was like, even at wide receiver speed doesn't matter because short area quickness is, if you got guys with short area quickness like Jerry Rice, like Anquan Bolden, Antonio Brown is not overly, he runs like a 4.5, which is very fast, but his short area quickness is what, his agility is what gets him over everybody.
He's shifty.
It's not about him being able to fly by anybody. And you see these guys like John Ross, who ran this 4.22, and now he's getting traded.
I was about to ask what happened to him.
They got him on the trading block because they don't want him anymore because it's a gimmick. It's just like when Al Davis was alive and he used to draft all these players in Oakland that were just fast. Like, he drafted Darius Hayward-Bay in the first round one year because he ran like a 4.2 something. Darius Hayward-Bay, like, never blossomed into any decent wide receiver, and he ended up being like Pittsburgh's fourth-string wide receiver a few years back. So, he's like, it's like, where's the speed really super important at? Like, all the guys that have these speed records, You know, Chris Johnson had a decent career, but it's not like anybody's saying he's the best running back ever. You know, all these guys that have all these speed records, you know, where are they at?
Yeah, like C.J. Spiller.
Yeah, C.J. Spiller was a really fast guy.
They clocked him at like 28 miles an hour one time in college.
He did nothing. Like, you know, he did a little bit here and there, but, you know, all these big speed records and all this 40-time records and, you know, all this stuff. And I think somebody brought it up in an article that I was reading. They were like, the higher 40 times are actually correlating to less NFL success. Like, the people with the highest 40 times are flaking out of the league quicker than everybody else. I remember Pittsburgh took a guy it was either the third or fourth round a few years ago named Dree Archer. They took him out of Kent State, and he had run like a 4.27 or something like that at the combine, and he ended up doing absolutely nothing for Pittsburgh the entire time he was there. I mean, he just nothing, you know. So, you know, these big 40 records and stuff, they're all correlating to like worse success. Like, they're all correlating to, you know, people ended up out of the league in 3 years. So, and then the combine as a whole, it just feels like they call it the underwear Olympics. And that's just what you're coaching these guys up on, how to get better numbers where they can get a better draft spot. And it's ridiculous. They've got to go by, you know, A, your tape that you have, and B, how you play when actual human beings are out there breathing down your neck, and actual people are having to catch the ball for you, and actual people are having to block for you. You know, that's what you need to go by. You know, you need to go by, you know, the tape and everything like that. And, you know, everybody's all about these measurables and things like that. These guys with these freakish measurables, and, you know, they get drafted and then they don't do anything. You know, it's cool about these athletes, and everybody's talking about like DK Metcalf, you know, out of Ole Miss.
I didn't even see him today.
You know, he benched 27 times at wide receiver, and he's 6'3", 230, and he ran a 4.3 something in the 40 time. And then everybody's trying to say he had 1.6% body fat, which is like impossible.
It was 1.9.
Yeah, and I don't even think that's possible, but because I don't think you're supposed to be able to live under 3%.
They said that it was 1.9 and it was unhealthy.
I mean, that's just kind of ridiculous.
He's massive,
and that's cool, but like, he's immediately, to me, he's like, it's like he's a great athlete, but and I mean, he played well at Ole Miss.
Yeah,
but honestly, I'd probably just not take him just because of that. I think there is such thing as, you know, you get these guys that are too athletic that they completely forget about the technique, and then they don't let you coach them on the technique because they don't want to be any better at it. They just say, I want to get by on my athleticism, and then you see them 10 years from then on some bankrupt show talking about how they're bankrupt.
I think might have been Trace McSorley. I think they asked him if he wanted to work with the DBs today.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was recruited as a safety.
Not shocking.
And I don't think he's going to be a good quarterback, but that's kind of disrespectful in my opinion, because this dude has worked and played college football at the highest level, D1 college football at a premier program, and then prepared throughout this offseason after the regular season ended as a quarterback.
Absolutely.
And you're going to come up to him and say, hey, bro, you want to work in at safety?
Yeah, unlike Nick Marshall, you know, when Nick Marshall came out of Auburn, they were like, hey, you know, you're probably not going to make it as a quarterback. Let's work you out at defensive back and, you know, see how you did. But they did that at the Senior Bowl. You know, they should have, you know, told Trace McSorley before then, not just said, hey, you want to go work out with the defensive backs, you know, when you haven't played it in years.
They should have done that with Lamar Jackson.
Trace McSorley can at least be better than Hackenberg.
Yeah.
They both went to the same college, and Trace McSorley blew him out of the water. I mean, you know, obviously this was after Hackenberg went for the draft, but, you know, McSorley ended up being far better than Hackenberg ever thought of being. You know, I know that even though I wouldn't pick Trace McSorley, I still think he'd be a better quarterback than Hackenberg would be.
Definitely.
Anybody would at this point.
And, like, talking about the combine, I think Kyler Murray is staying at home and showing everybody on his pro day. I think it's a smart decision. And the reason I think it is it's in his controlled environment. And I was watching these receivers today when these quarterbacks were throwing the ball, and they would throw perfect balls and the receivers would drop. So by being in a controlled environment and throwing to receivers he trusts, I feel like, and he probably does have the most to lose. I think he's doing it right, and I think anybody that says otherwise is wrong.
Yeah, but he is, and the reason why he's doing it right is because he's got it figured out. These numbers matter so much to these people when these numbers are really the most insignificant thing. It's like, last year you had Orlando Brown Jr. that was coming out of Oklahoma as a tackle. He comes out and he has the worst combine performance of like anybody in history. Like he runs a 5.85 in the 40 time. They talked about his body, how weird his body looked. He did like 14 bench press reps as an offensive lineman. He's 6'8", 340, and did 14 reps of 225 when there's guys like DK Metcalf doing 27 of them. And horrible, cone drills and stuff like that, and talking about, he's worst among this, worst among that. He had like the second worst 40 time among anybody that's ever been drafted. And he came out and they talked about he didn't give up a sack this year in Baltimore, and seems to be a pretty decent pick, especially I think he got picked in the 3rd round. Seems to be panning out pretty well as a right tackle. They got Ronnie Stanley over there on the left side. It seems like Orlando Brown's panned out on the right side, and he had the worst combine performance you could possibly have. But you got these guys with like the best combine performance ever, and then they end up flaking out of the league.
So, do you think it's more of like a money thing, like to help the league? Or
Well, I know it was
or what
started.
Do you think it's like maybe, I don't know how to word it, like maybe a publicity stunt in a way, like to promote press?
I mean, it's become, other than the draft, which is the premier off-season activity for football, period, is the NFL draft. It's like the second most, televised and, sought after off-season activity is to watch the NFL Combine and see what all these numbers come out for these guys. And everybody's enamored with speed, like who can run the fastest 40 time ever, and everybody's enamored with who can jump the highest on the vertical jump, who can jump 42 inches in a vertical jump, who can bench press 225 40 times.
Like, what does that matter?
Exactly. I mean,
what does
I can see where bench press would, somewhat translate to maybe play strength as an offensive or defensive lineman.
Why does a kicker need to be bench pressing 225 as many times as possible?
Exactly.
Why does
a quarterback need to? I mean, the quarterback you don't need a bench press to show anything. I mean,
why does an offensive lineman need to do a vertical jump?
I mean, exactly.
Or a broad jump.
It's like, it was like Mel, and go back to the Brady 6 again, and Mel Kiper was like, that 40 time Tom Brady ran and that vertical jump, he was one of the worst quarterbacks we'd ever seen do it.
Now he's the greatest of all time.
And
so what is
Tom Brady said, yeah, I'm not that athletic, but fortunately that's not what quarterback's about playing either.
Exactly.
He was like, 40 time and vertical jump for a quarterback. What? I mean, I can see. I could even
as a
see,
kicker and a punter, like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I could even see like 40 time just to gauge like if they're fairly mobile or not. But vertical jump for a quarterback, what are they? Who is going to need a vertical jump besides wide receiver and corner to see how tall they can jump to, win a 50-50 ball? Nobody else needs nobody else needs a vertical jump. Nobody else needs it at all. So it's like, why is everybody so, uptight about what these numbers, like a broad jump? What do you need a broad jump for? Broad jump is something that you do in track and field. Why do they need that number for an NFL combine? Just for people to say that they did it?
What, are you jumping over Jadeveon Clowney?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if this was a game of you jumping from place to place, yeah, the broad jump would be important. But the broad jump is probably the single most useless, telling stat. I mean, it tells a little bit of athleticism. That's it. I mean, the NFL seems to be so worried about getting these freak athletes instead of just getting good football players. It's all about getting these freak athletes. Who's this defensive end that's 6'5", 280, runs a 4.3, which is, seems pretty impossible. But, like that's what they're trying to get. They're trying to get these freak athletes, but then they get them out on the field and they realize they can't coach them because they either just don't get it
Or
or
too
they're just
egotistical.
egotistical, and they say, well, I'm the best athlete out here, so I can do whatever I want. You know, you might be able to like coach a guy like Michael Vick, who is a fantastic athlete, but at the end of the day, when did Michael Vick ever go to the Super Bowl?
He's close like one time.
Exactly. He never won it. Never even got close. So I mean, athleticism is really cool to look at, but athleticism, you know, you it's like Max Kellerman was talking about when Tim Tebow announced that he was going to go play baseball. He was like baseball is not a sport where you can impose your will on it. Well, football is a sport where you can impose your will on it. It's not all about being an athlete in football. Now, at the high school level, if you get a kid that legit runs a 4.3, you're not going to lose too many games, just because unless you're in 7A football like in Alabama, if you're in 3A football and you got somebody that runs a 4.3 on your team, you're probably going to win just about every game, because all you're going to have to do is hand it off to him, because nobody's going to be able to catch him. Well, when the short area quickness gets a lot quicker, like in the NFL, yeah, 4.3 is still very fast, but there's still a bunch of guys that are going to have a lot of short area quickness that are going to get there before you can turn those jets on most of the time.
They were talking about today, they were showing some receiver who ran they were showing him compared to AB, OBJ, and Julio in his 40 time, and he beat all three of them.
Yeah.
And I said, into my mind, I was like, that's great, but those three guys are Hall of Famers.
Yep.
They're freaks. He might be a freak, but is he going to be good?
Yeah, it's like fantastic. You ran the 40 time, that's fantastic. You're fast, but where are all of your other discernible skills, and where are these intangibles on the football field? You hear a lot about these guys, and they come in here and they test great at the combine or whatever, but then they interview poorly, and then you look at them on film and it looks like they tried a few times or got real spirited against a team that they didn't like and really wanted to beat them, but then in the other 11 games during the regular season, they just took plays off and, did whatever. It reminds me of Ndamukong Suh a few years ago. This guy was the top-rated recruit or whatever. 2015, he just absolutely wrecks Alabama's offensive line. We cannot stop him, and that's partially the reason why we lost the game, besides starting Cooper Bateman in the game. Is we're just getting absolutely wrecked by Ndamukong Suh. He's got a sack every time we look. Well, then he gets drafted in the first round, in the late first round by the Cardinals. He has done nothing. He has done nothing because he just does not put the work in. I'm honestly convinced he just does not put the work in. It's like when we were in high school, like the only thing about I don't have any regrets about high school or anything, but I do wish that, as far as like playing football, that I would have just hit the weights harder and just tried to get, and tried to put more work ethic into it. When you're like 16 years old, you get content and you just don't want to work any harder. Like, I wish I could just go back in the workroom and work harder, these guys that they have all this talent in the world, but they don't want to work hard at it at all. Like, J.J. Watt's got a great body and he's got a lot of length at defensive end or whatever, and he's a very athletic guy, but he also is the hardest worker in the league. Like Tom Brady mentally outworks everybody. Well, J.J. Watt physically outworks everybody. Like, that's just what happens. It's not all about pure athleticism in football. Sometimes it is about A, being smarter, and sometimes it's about B, just wanting it more. Like,
and
it's
how
not,
you carry, but are you going to have to be coached
exactly.
outside of off the field?
And can you be coached?
Not only
will you be coached?
Are you going to have to be babysat?
Exactly.
And I want to correct you. It's not Ndamukong Suh. It was Ndamukong Suh played in Nebraska.
Not Ndamukong Suh. You're Robert Kimdichie.
Yeah. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Oh, my goodness. I want to go back and completely cut that out.
But that's kind of a good segue into. I just want to jump off this topic just for a little the combine. And this is one that I don't want to say I feel dearly about, but because in I think the last episode, maybe the first episode we talked about the veer and running the ball and the triple option.
Yep.
Do you think running a veer or triple option type of offense in high school hinders great players from moving on to college? And if so, should that system be ran even though we enjoy it, but is not as common in college and not as common now, and the game is under standard, and there's not many teams in college running that system?
I think it doesn't exactly help quarterbacks and receivers out. And it doesn't exactly help offensive linemen in the grain of learning how to pass block, because that was one thing I remember at DAR that we absolutely just never worked on offense. Every time we would run any type of pass play, they would just tell us to cut, and like I was the only guy that would just actually you would watch on film, and the other four are just trying to cut their guy, and I'm just sitting there trying to pass block him like normal, because I didn't understand. I was like, aren't we just supposed to pass block here like a normal team does, which was also like my first year playing football. So I mean, I was just kind of trying to go by what I knew. I was like, don't we just pass block here? That I do believe it hinders some development as far as these passing games and things like that. But as far as for running backs and just athletes in general that are just going to get the ball, it teaches them great running skills. The quarterbacks that are quick guys, they may not learn they may not get as much work in the passing game as they probably need to going into the college level. But they'll definitely learn how to run the ball real well, be able to carry it well, and it'll probably help them out with fumbles and things like that and carrying the ball. Even if a wide receiver is not getting to catch the ball much, if you got just a talented kid that happens to probably be best at wide receiver, he's still going to run the ball in that kind of offense. It's just going to happen. Or he may even be plugged into the quarterback slot, making reads and stuff. So it kind of helps him play a different position. And then at the end of the day, offensive linemen learn a lot of great things like traps, pulls, counter blocks. They learn how to, get their rules exactly down. You may have a counter option or something, and you got one side that's just, tackle's just kind of pulling a hinge, and the other side is where it's play side. You're learning how to down block. And then above all, you're learning that you've got to get aggressive and have a mean streak when you block. And it doesn't matter if it's running game or passing game, you've got to have a mean streak. But you especially have to have it in the run game. You got to want to punish the guy that you're supposed to block. You got to want to knock him out. So I do believe that, it hinders the guys as far as quarterbacks, running backs, pass catching running backs, wide receivers, and pass blocking O-linemen. It does hurt their development in that area. I'm certain just because they don't run it hardly. Like I said, we never even went over any kind of pass blocking at DAR when I played.
It teaches you to be disciplined and technical.
But it does teach you how it, and yeah, it's a big thing is it teaches discipline. Teams that run, they know that if they get behind the chains or they commit false starts or they commit stupid penalties like a personal foul, they're literally behind the chains. So they work together and become less disciplined or become more disciplined over, the lifespan of that offense, because they know that if they get behind the chains, it's going to be hard for them to keep up, So I do believe that it teaches them a lot of discipline, teaches them, how to be disciplined on the snap count, not false start, not false starting and things like that. Teaches good blocking rules up front, and then teaches everybody that touches the ball how to run with the ball and how to tuck it away. So, for the passing game, it doesn't help, but for a lot of other aspects of football, it definitely does help.
And that probably translates to if you're a good football player that's going to get recruited, and maybe if you run such a technical offense, whether you're a running back or an offensive lineman or a tight end, that you can be coached into a different system.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and I also feel like if you have a great a really good quarterback coming up through middle school who gets throwing the ball around and his if his parents are wise or smart and he does throw the ball around, and the offensive system in high school is different, more run based, veer, triple option, they'll probably transfer him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about high school ball that a lot of coaches get, but then a lot of coaches don't, is you've got to form your game planning and your offense and your defense around what players you have. That's just what you have to do. It's hard to come out with this culture and just say this is what we do every time. Now, if you have similar athletes every year, like for example, Fife High School, Fife High School has, Paul Benefield's been the head coach up there since like '97. And they run the wing tee or some kind of power running offense every year he's been up there, and he's won a lot of games up there. Well, they're always going to have similar athletes up there year in, year out.
Cornbread fed, like potato, like big country boys.
I mean, it's like as close to Iowa as you're going to get in Alabama. It's just,
and they have a small stadium too, which is really cool. It's a cool little town.
Yeah, it's just a big, offensive linemen that eat collard greens and, hog jaw on the weekends, and you may have a kid that's pretty fast overall, but you probably not going to have any guys running 4.3s and 4.2s and stuff. So they just outpower everybody, and it usually works because they have bought into that system, and he knows exactly how to coach it.
But talking about Five, that gets me excited because it's the type of football we like to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
We used to eat at a Mexican restaurant right across the road from it in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was like two versions of that restaurant. There was one in Section and one in Rainsville, but we used to go to the one at Fife because it was way better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a guy that goes to school with me that went to Fife High School and played there, and we got to talking for a little bit while we were at ARI training together, and he was talking about this is what we do at Fife, and I was like, yeah, man, and you got Coach Benefield up there. That guy's like a legend. He's got 3 championship rings now, and he's been there, and he's on to especially these past few years, and he was like, yep, he's like, Coach Benefield's the man.
And I think it means more in high school to win a state championship because than winning a championship in college or in the NFL, because majority of your high school players will not play college football.
Yep, and I just imagine how I felt after we won, or like how you felt after you guys won, or how you guys felt after y'all went to the playoffs, for the first time in the program history.
I remember when Guntersville won the state championship game, how excited I was.
Yeah.
We didn't even go to Guntersville.
Exactly.
But they were our neighbors, and it was really cool to see them win their first championship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting, and that's the thing about the high school sports is there's some people that don't realize it, but there may be more passion in high school sports than there are in anything, and it may be hard to see because of, Alabama and Auburn here in Alabama and whatever, and about college football, but it just seems like high school ball has just got that passion, and it gets entire communities together.
Well, look at, I remember when DAR had their first home game, like the town shut down pretty much.
Absolutely.
And it was there. And then I remember when Guntersville and DAR played for the first time, and the stadium was packed. When they were singing the national anthem, the traffic, and for the listeners, the road into the stadium runs, the campus road runs through the campus, but the road to the football field cuts between the baseball and softball field and goes behind the home bleachers all the way up to continues on to the field house. And traffic, when they were singing the national anthem, was backed up from the parking lot all the way between the softball and baseball fields and then over the hill underneath the red light. That was during the national anthem. DAR got beat like 34-7. Guntersville had a running back that was like 6'7". But that was just cool. And then you look at like the two-a-days, and this is just in Alabama. This is just a microscopic version of how meaningful college or high school football is. You look at like two-a-days, how Hoover acts. Then you move to Texas, And you got stadiums in Texas that are high school stadiums in Texas that are bigger than some college.
Yeah, like Allen High School,
Yeah.
which was where Kyler Murray played at.
Or
if I remember.
South Lake
South Lake Carroll.
like where Greg Mack played. And
Odessa Permian.
Yeah.
And Trinity High School in Texas. I mean, there's just, it's just different, and that's the thing that I didn't realize until I got older is people don't realize how many athletes come out of Alabama. Like, Alabama is one of the, if I'm being honest, I think it's California, it's Florida, Texas, Ohio, and Alabama are the 5 states for football players in the entire nation. If you just picked 5 states and we're saying, I'm going to go with these 5, and Louisiana would probably be number 6. But I would say I'd put Alabama up there in the top 5, and that's not just being from Alabama. That's just seeing the people that have come, these players that have come out of Alabama, even like in Clemson, Justin Ross that was in the national title game. I mean, that guy, and I'd say Louisiana probably be 6, Georgia'd probably be 7. I mean,
a lot of the players out of Louisiana stay and go to LSU.
Yep, a lot of them do. But recently, Alabama's been plucking a lot of them.
Yeah, that is true.
So, but I would say it. I mean, I didn't realize it until I got older. But, Alabama's just got some freak athletes that come out, year in, year out,
Most
especially
of them, and a lot of them stay within state.
Yep, absolutely. It's kind of like, you would go, like, if you wanted a hockey player, you're going to go to Michigan or you're going to go to Massachusetts or somewhere like that for some big-time hockey prospect in America. Well, for big-time football prospects, you need to look at the Southeast or the South in general.
I remember when Tanae Patrick was coming up, and he
at a old North Jackson.
At North Jackson. He went on and played in Alabama, but I remember looking at his rivals' profile, and he had offers. I knew Alabama and Auburn had offered him, but he had it's like big time ACC offers. But he was also getting offers from USC, and there was talks about him going and playing at USC, and he might have actually got to play then. But I just thought it was so cool that because I was an 8th grader when he was a senior, and we were on the sideline. I helped with the varsity team, like as a water boy or a ball boy or something, and I was just like, man, it's pretty cool to see somebody that's that talented playing here. Then the next year played against what's his name that played at Columbia. My mind.
Trey Flowers.
Yeah, Trey Flowers. He's a world champion. Yeah,
I remember when I still remember I feel like it was like late in the recruiting process when they finally gave him some stars. He was a no-star prospect like all throughout.
In Arkansas offered him late.
Yeah, all throughout his senior year, which was my junior and your sophomore year, he was like a no-star prospect on Rivals, and I was like, how? This guy's a freak athlete. They have not seen him play. And then he becomes a 3-star prospect, gets signed to Arkansas, and I was like, okay. And then he goes to Arkansas, and as a freshman, he's just tearing it up already, and I was like, Jesus, we could have told these people, I was like, this guy is a beast. And then he got drafted by the Patriots, and I was like, well, they've probably got a player there. I mean, he's pretty good. And then all of a sudden, he's probably their best pass rusher. And played Columbia High School, over there on Research Park, or not Research Park, but over there in the Research Park area, just off of Slaughter Road over there on Madison.
I remember when he got to Arkansas his freshman year, when they played Bama, there was a screen pass that they threw that it would have been AJ threw to him and to Trent Richardson, and Trey was in AJ's face. And it was a screen pass, so they're going to release him, but he was in AJ's face, and the ball literally went through his arms. Like he was just a second too late, or he would have picked that ball off.
Yep,
he was
absolutely.
a freshman.
I mean, he was a crazy football player. People don't realize how much talent comes through these areas in Alabama, and especially in the Huntsville area. Huntsville's just got basketball stars, football stars, baseball stars. Craig Kimbrell.
Trevor Lacey played. I think he's playing in Europe now, but he played.
Trevor Lacey played at Butler.
And then that other
There's
guy.
a guy from Alabama that's playing at Alabama, John Petty, that played at Jemison High School, I believe. There's a lot of talented guys. There was a guy that played for Alabama a few years back in basketball, Levi Randolph, that came out of Bob Jones.
And then you got Reggie Ragland.
Yeah, Reggie Ragland. There's a guy that plays for Alabama basketball, Riley Norris, that came from Albertville or Boaz.
Yeah.
One of those two. I think it was Albertville. I mean, there's some talented athletes, you know.
We'll try to wrap this up. I got like 3 topics I want to talk about. One is just pretty quick.
Let's blaze them.
Johnny Football getting released and banned from the CFL.
I didn't look into that. What did he get banned for?
He didn't want to come to team meetings, I believe.
That sounds about right.
I'll double check right now.
Hopefully he does get signed to the AAF just to where we can see him. You know, I'd like to just see him one more time play, but he's not going to put any work. His career is finished. He's not going to make it back to the NFL. He doesn't need to make it back to the NFL.
Well, some of these articles are saying that the CFL or whatever team he played for is not wanting. They're saying there's something that happened that they're not talking about. But this one says that he violated his contract. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was because he just didn't want to come to team meetings, and I could be completely wrong.
Maybe, but it's something.
And then his wife got she like ran some marathon and like put up some stupid time, and then apparently she cheated.
Oh my goodness!
Because the times that they were, like, it was in their stages, and like each stage, like, they were comparing it to other people, and they were world records, and she was breaking them. And if you look at her, she looks like one of these Instagram models that just looks like a fake human.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. You know, if Manziel's throwing his career away, he's throwing it away, and you know, might as well just leave it at that. He's old news at this point. He just keeps trying to make himself relevant with bad boy stuff, and you know, once a spoiled kid, always a spoiled kid.
You remember in Wedding Crashers, whenever they're playing rugby, and one of the brothers, it's like, that's how Maryland does crab cakes and football.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Crabtree got free crab cakes for life from Jimmy's Famous Seafood for signing with the Ravens.
Well, that's pretty awesome, especially considering they've already cut him and he's looking for another team. I mean, at least he gets free crab cakes for life every time he goes to Baltimore. That's pretty nice. And
the last one we'll end on is, will anyone other than QBs ever win the Heisman again? And if so, will it only be a running back, or will you ever see anybody outside those two positions win it?
Unfortunately, I don't think anybody besides a quarterback will ever win again, because everybody is so enamored with points, and they're trying to take the chess match out of football. They're trying to make it an offensive showcase, and it shouldn't be. It needs to be a chess match like it was. That's why people that couldn't stand the Super Bowl, I liked it, because it was a chess match. It forced the coach. I forget who said it. I think there was somebody on ESPN or something that said it. It forced the coaches to coach, is what they said. And that was perfect. That's the most perfect way I can put it. It forced the coaches to coach. It forced them to adjust. It wasn't all about, oh, everything that I call is going to be correct. You know, the coaches just coached, and the best coach won, which was Belichick as usual. Honestly, I don't think another running back is. A running back would, if anybody besides a quarterback won, it would be a running back. I think it's kind of unfair that, you know, even though, like, you know, Charles Woodson was a primarily defensive player that won it over Peyton Manning back in '97.
That's garbage.
Now that's garbage, but a guy like Ndamukong Suh a few years ago that does not play for Ole Miss, unlike Robert Kimdichie. God, I wish I could cut that out. Or like a guy like, you know, Jonathan Allen for Alabama a few years ago. They absolutely deserve to be finalists and deserve to get votes. You know, the Heisman needs to quit being about the best quarterback in the nation or the best offensive player.
Well, you have two quarterback awards.
Exactly.
You have two quarterback awards.
It needs to be the best player I look at it this way, honestly. It needs to be the best player on one of the top teams in the nation who's making the biggest impact on the field, period.
And I really think that Derek will be the last running back that has won the Heisman.
Possibly so.
Because the way this whole, we never thought Alabama would run the type of offense that they're running now. We never thought we'd have a quarterback like that.
Exactly.
And that's the way the game's going.
Now, you got Tua. Okay, well, he absolutely deserved to be a Heisman finalist because he was the best player overall and the guy that made the most impact on Alabama season for Alabama. Kyler Murray made the most impact on Oklahoma season for them. Who were the other?
Dwayne Haskins.
Dwayne Haskins made the most impact for Ohio State.
He broke Big Ten records.
But, see, if Dwayne Haskins, as great of a season as he had, if Nick Bosa hadn't have gotten hurt, if Nick Bosa would have continued on the path he was continuing on for the entire year and played through the entire season, I would have said Nick Bosa should have been at the Heisman Trophy ceremony because he probably made more of an impact than Dwayne Haskins did. Because when he was gone, the defense completely died. It's got to be the best players that make the biggest impacts on the best teams in the nation. Like, as much as I liked watching him play, like, people used to talk about, in 2009 when Mark Ingram won it over Toby Gerhart. And everybody was like, well, they screwed Toby Gerhart out of that award. He carried Stanford to that. Well, for one, Stanford had a redshirt freshman quarterback named Andrew Luck on the team, too. It wasn't like it was all Toby Gerhart doing it. Like, they had a guy that was he was going to be a surefire number one draft pick. They didn't know it at that point, but, he ended up being, and he's one of the best quarterbacks out there. And Toby Gerhart did have a great year. I'm not taking that away from him in any way, but he had over 100 more carries than Mark Ingram did for just a few hundred more yards. He had a bunch of touchdowns, but he only carried it for a few hundred more yards on over 100 more carries. If you carry the ball 100 more times for 200 more yards, you're averaging 2 yards a carry. That's not good. So he did have a great year, but Mark Ingram had a great year on a team that didn't finish 8-5, on a team that finished with a national championship win.
A defeated team.
It's got to be the player that's had the best overall player with the best overall impact on one of the best overall teams.
And Deshaun Watson should have won it in 2016.
Exactly. Unless it's somebody, like, say, for some reason, like, let me just pick a random school. Let's pick Houston. Let's say Houston, because Houston's in the American Athletic Conference. Let's say Houston finishes a regular season 8-4. They just had a terrible defense. But they had some quarterback, Joe Schmo Rogers, that threw for unheard of numbers, 62 touchdowns and 3 picks.
And broke all of Case Keenum's records.
And ran for 4, wasn't known for being mobile, but ran for 4 more touchdowns and had 66 total touchdowns in, 12 games. Pretty much was the entire offensive output for his entire team. Didn't make hardly any mistakes. It was just the defense was like 121st in the nation in total defense, and they just couldn't stop anybody, and they couldn't outscore everybody, so they went 8-4. Now you have to send that guy to the Heisman Trophy ceremony just because of the pure numbers aspect. But when you got these guys that had good years, like running back that ran for 1,800 yards and 25 touchdowns on an 8-4 Stanford team, he does not get in over some of these guys like Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa. It's just not happening. I think that the Heisman Trophy has got to go to the overall best player, or the finalists have to be the best players that made the biggest impacts on the best overall teams in the nation, unless their numbers are so astronomical that you cannot leave them out. That's absolutely.
That's probably why Amari Cooper was in the draft or as a finalist in 2014 or 2013.
Yeah, because his numbers were just. It
was 2014.
1,700 something yards and like 17 receiving touchdowns. He was pretty much half of the total passing output for the entire team. I mean, and plus he was on one of the best teams in the nation. He was
Right.
as great as Blake Sims was, and I loved Blake Sims that year. Amari Cooper was the best overall player who made the biggest impact on one of the best overall teams in the nation. He absolutely deserved to go to New York. That's how I feel about the Heisman Trophy. Unfortunately, the original question, I do not believe anybody besides the quarterback will ever win it because everybody is just so focused on it's got to be nothing but offense and trying to take the chess match and trying to take defense out of the game. Like, defense can hardly play anymore. It's got to be all about how good the quarterback is. But, so unfortunately, I think I'll have to agree with you and think that, quarterbacks are probably just going to win from here on out. But my criteria is best overall player, made the biggest impact on one of the best overall teams in the nation, gets an invite to go to Heisman.
And probably the one time that it's not a quarterback or a running back, it is going to get overlooked over a quarterback or running back who actually deserved it.
Who actually deserved to win.
Like
Charles Woodson getting it over
yes.
Peyton Manning. And Charles Woodson was a great player then. He was a great player in the NFL, but he did not deserve it over Peyton Manning that year. And probably, honestly, I would have said he probably should finish third behind Randy Moss, too. Because people don't understand. Randy Moss went to the Heisman finalists, went to New York that year. He's playing at Marshall. He played at Marshall 96 and 97. 97 is the first year that they went in Division 1A and finished 10-3 that year. And Randy Moss caught for almost 2,000 yards, or may have caught for over 2,000 yards, somewhere around that, and 27 touchdowns at receiver. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, he probably should have won it. I mean, your best position, but you're right, though. I agree with you.
I just think that that's my criteria. I may be wrong, but I think that that's my criteria for best overall player, made the biggest impact on one of the best overall teams in the nation.
I agree with you, and I also agree that I'm hungry, and we're going to go eat some Huddle House.
We're going to eat some Huddle House. We appreciate you guys listening to it. We're on all of the major, podcast outlets now. We're on iTunes, so you can download us on, if you still have an iPod, like I do. I still have an iPod that I listen to. If you still have or if you got an iPhone and you want to download it.
Are we on
there.
Spotify?
We are on Spotify as
there
well. We are on Google Podcasts, so you should be able to download it on an Android phone if you have that. We've got it, or, if you have a tablet that you listen to, that you put your podcast on, you can download it on that. You can listen to it on Anchor.fm.
And it's still on YouTube, too.
And it's all going to get posted on YouTube as well.
You can watch the video, but you're just going to be staring at our logo.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you got YouTube Red, you can turn it on and, just kind of hook it up. And listen to it with your aux cord, or put your headphones on and listen to it on YouTube, especially if you got YouTube Red, or if you would just want to leave it open on your phone. But there's plenty of platforms for you to go listen to us now. There's plenty of platforms for you to actually download it. There's plenty of ways for you to listen to the podcast now. So just share it to everybody, every football fan that that wants to listen to a podcast. They don't just have to be from Tennessee Valley just because we are from the Tennessee Valley. They can be from anywhere, and we will take opinions from anybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.